Welcome back to Meaningful Living, a space where we embrace the beauty of aging, one choice at a time. Today, we're going to talk about something that quietly reshaped my life, not by adding more, but by letting go. As the years unfold, we often carry with us invisible bags, filled with habits, expectations, and old beliefs that no longer serve us. Some are heavy, some go unnoticed, but all of them take space we could fill with joy. In my 60s, I began to loosen my grip. What followed was unexpected. More lightness, more presence, and yes, more happiness than I ever thought possible in my 70s. This video isn't about perfection or grand advice. It's about 12 simple things I stopped doing, and how each one made room for something better. So settle in, breathe deeply, and if you find a bit of your own story reflected here, know that you're not alone. Let's begin this journey gently together, breaking free from doom scrolling. It often starts with good intentions, just a quick glance at the weather, a short check-in with the news. But somehow, minutes slip away. Before long, the world outside fades, and we find ourselves caught in a spiral of headlines, opinions, and noise. In my 60s, I realized this digital habit was stealing more than time. It was draining my peace of mind. Each scroll seemed to add weight, not insight. So I made a quiet decision to stop letting the screen dictate my day. Notifications were silenced. The phone stayed in another room during meals. I reclaimed the morning for stillness, a walk, a journal entry, a warm cup of tea without the buzz of updates. And in that space, something beautiful happened. I began to truly see the world again. The way sunlight touched the curtains, the way a friend's laughter lingered a little longer. The digital noise softened, and in its place, life returned with all its gentle details. Letting go of endless scrolling gave me back the present. And that, I've come to believe, is one of the most precious gifts of growing older. The ability to be here, fully now. Letting go of the need to rush. For much of life, rushing feels like the only way to keep up. Tasks, plans, errands, one after another, as if hurrying through them brings more meaning. But somewhere in my 60s, I noticed something. The faster I moved, the less I actually felt. Joy began to hide in the pauses, in the quiet moments I had been rushing past. So I began to slow down. A cup of tea became a ceremony. A walk through the neighborhood turned into a small adventure. Time wasn't something to race through anymore. It became something to savor. Surprisingly, by doing less, I felt more. My conversations deepened. My meals tasted richer. Even the simplest chores became acts of mindfulness. It wasn't about stopping. It was about choosing. Choosing to live with presence rather than urgency. And now, in these years of grace and reflection, I've discovered something truly unexpected. The slower you move, the more life opens up. Prioritizing quality relationships. There comes a time when you realize that being surrounded by people isn't the same as feeling truly connected. In my 60s, that truth settled in gently. For years, I tried to stay in touch with everyone, acquaintances, distant friends, familiar faces from long ago. But it became clear my heart had limits. And what it longed for wasn't quantity, it was depth. So I began to focus on the people who made me feel safe, seen, and loved. The ones I could laugh with, cry with, sit in silence with. I let go of superficial connections, not with bitterness, but with kindness. Some relationships belong to a chapter that is closed, and that's okay. What remained were moments that filled me up, long talks, shared memories, quiet afternoons with people who truly mattered. These became my treasures, not the crowded calendars, but the gentle company. In choosing fewer, I gained more, and now, my heart feels lighter and so much fuller. Ditching uncomfortable clothes. There's something liberating about reaching a point in life where comfort becomes non-negotiable. Tight waistbands, pinching shoes, fabrics that itch, they all quietly take a toll. One day, I simply asked myself, why am I choosing discomfort? And I couldn't find a good reason. So I gave my closet a soft revolution. Out went the clothes that poked, pulled, and pinched. In came soft fabrics, flowing shapes, and shoes that supported rather than punished. And no, it didn't mean giving up on style. It meant redefining it, dressing in a way that reflects not just how I want to look, but how I want to feel. There's a joy in pulling on something that feels like a gentle hug, in walking without pain, and sitting through a conversation without adjusting your outfit. These little comforts add up, and suddenly, every day feels a bit more kind. It's a quiet act of self-respect, and one that reminds me, life is too short for tight pants. Ending impulsive purchases. There was a time when a shiny new gadget or a trendy trinket felt like a small thrill, a way to brighten the day. But somewhere in my 60s, I looked around and realized I had more things than space to enjoy them. Shelves were crowded, drawers overflowed, and yet, the sense of joy I hoped those items would bring, it rarely arrived. So I pressed pause. Before every purchase, I asked, do I really need this? Will it add meaning to my life, or just take up space? That one question changed everything. I began to declutter, not just my home, but my habits. I let go of the urge to fill quiet moments with purchases, and instead, I filled them with presence. Now I treasure what I have. A cozy chair becomes a sanctuary. A simple vase holds more than flowers, it holds intention. Letting go of impulsive shopping gave me back my space, my clarity, and my calm. And truly, nothing I could buy feels better than that. Trusting my instincts over others' opinions. For much of life, it's easy to hand the wheel to others, to trust their advice, follow their path, live by their approval. But in my 60s, I began to wonder, what if my own voice is the one I've needed all along? So I started listening. Quietly at first, I check in with my gut before making a decision. I gave myself permission to follow my own rhythm, not the trends, not the expectations, not the noise. It was freeing. Each small decision I made from within, whether it was how to spend my weekend or where to place a new plant, reminded me that I knew what mattered to me. I didn't need a vote of confidence from the outside. I just needed a little faith in myself. And the more I trusted that quiet voice, the clearer it became. Now I live guided not by opinions, but by intuition. And that shift has brought a deep sense of peace I never knew I was missing. Letting go of self-criticism. If anyone else had spoken to me the way I used to speak to myself, I would have walked away. But somehow, a harsh inner voice was allowed to stay for years. It took root in small ways, second-guessing every word, replaying mistakes long after they were forgotten, focusing more on flaws than efforts. In my 60s, I finally began to change the script. I learned to speak to myself with the same kindness I offered others. To say, you did the best you could with what you knew. To look at the mirror and see not what was missing, but what had endured. That simple shift, from criticism to compassion, transformed the way I moved through the world. I stopped fearing mistakes. I began to try new things. I gave myself space to grow. And the more I offered myself grace, the more I saw just how much I deserved it all along. Releasing the need for perfection. Perfection used to feel like the finish line, a place I was always trying to reach. A spotless home, a flawless answer, a life lived just right. But perfection, I've learned, is a moving target, and chasing it only left me tired. In my 60s, I stopped running. I gave myself permission to be human, to have a little dust on the shelves, to forget a name, to speak from the heart even if it wasn't polished. And in that permission, I found something better than perfection. I found peace. Now, I embrace the crooked lines in my sketchbook, the typos in my texts, the laughter that comes when things don't go as planned. Because a perfect life isn't one that looks flawless. It's one that feels real. Mastering the art of saying no. There's a quiet kind of power in the word no. For many years, I whispered it or avoided it altogether. I said yes to invitations, favors, and requests, even when my heart said otherwise. But in my 60s, I began to feel the cost, not just in time, but in energy, peace, and joy. So I began a gentle practice, saying no with kindness and without guilt, not because I didn't care, but because I finally did, about my time, my boundaries, and my well-being. I learned that no to one thing was a yes to something else. Rest, creativity, loved ones, myself. The world didn't fall apart. The people who mattered understood. And slowly, I reclaimed space for what truly filled me up. No isn't a rejection. It's a redirection toward a life that feels aligned and whole. Reducing constant news consumption. In a world where headlines never stop, it's easy to feel overwhelmed, as if staying informed means staying anxious. For a long time, I believed I had to keep up with everything. But the more news I consumed, the more exhausted I felt. So I made a shift. I chose to tune in just once a day, from a calm, reliable source. And then, gently, I stepped away. I stopped letting every alert invade my mind and started filling those moments with peace instead. A walk, a book, a quiet breath. It didn't make me uninformed. It made me intentional. And as the noise faded, I began to hear something softer. My own thoughts, my own heart, my own life unfolding, releasing worries about aging. For many years, aging felt like something to fear, a slow fading of who I was. But something changed. As I moved through my 60s and into my 70s, I began to see aging differently. Not as an ending, but as an unfolding. Not as decline, but as deepening. Yes, things shifted. But what I gained was far more precious than what I lost. Wisdom, perspective, clarity, freedom. The lines on my face became stories. The gray in my hair, a crown earned through living. I stopped worrying about what others saw and started focusing on how I felt. Curious, grateful, alive. And isn't that what youth was always meant to lead us to? Stopping the habit of over-apologizing. There was a time when the word sorry slipped from my lips far too often, for reaching, for speaking, for simply existing in someone's space. But then I asked myself, why apologize for being human? In my 60s, I began to shift. I stopped saying sorry when I meant thank you. I stood tall instead of shrinking. I claimed my space gently, yet firmly. And something beautiful happened. My confidence grew. My words carried more weight. My presence felt rooted, no longer hesitant. Apologizing when it's needed is kind. Apologizing for existing is a habit we can leave behind. Because taking up space with grace, respect, and self-worth is not just allowed, it's necessary. A journey worth taking. Letting go isn't easy. It asks us to release familiar patterns, to loosen the grip on things we've carried for decades. But with every release comes space. With every shift comes freedom. These 12 changes didn't happen overnight. They unfolded slowly, quietly, like morning light through soft curtains. But each one became a step towards something deeper, peace, presence, and a life that finally felt like my own. If there's one truth I've come to embrace, it's this. Life after 60 isn't a fading chapter. It's a beginning, a season of rediscovery, connection, and clarity. And if even one of these lessons resonates with you, then perhaps your journey, too, is just beginning. So take a breath, take your time, and take heart, because the best is never behind us. It's always within reach.